Randy, the interesting part is it's normal. Even when few bombs explode about, let's see, mile away or 2 miles away, you're good. You keep on playing, and even your mother doesn't say anything. So as a kid, you kind of you become so immune. You just go on until the bombs get closer. Then you take action. So this is how the childhood was, and it was the norm. And for me, it was when people hear that, they had a reaction to it, and I'm like, well, this is life. To me, it wasn't abnormal. Now I think about it, and it is abnormal.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host. As always, I want to remind everyone that our podcast is made possible by MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. Well, this is episode number 67 of Prescription for Success, and it's being released on Labor Day in 2021. So in honor of the holiday, we at MD Coaches decided to offer an encore of one of our favorite prior episodes. It features a gentleman who is the very embodiment of hard work in pursuit of the American dream, Dr. Jihad Mustapha, better known to his friends as Jay, grew up in Lebanon during the Civil War of the 1970s. His story of a journey that began with selling umbrellas on the streets of New York to eventually becoming an internationally famous cardiologist is the very definition of inspiring. So let's rehear my conversation with Dr. J. Mustapha. So I'm speaking today with Dr. Jihad Mustapha, who has a very interesting story. And let me simply begin by saying hello, Jihad, and welcome to Prescription for Success.
Hello, Randy, and thank you for this great opportunity.
Great to have you here. So, Jihad, when I say that your story is interesting and different, that is unquestionably a profound understatement. I speak with a lot of physicians on this show, and typically we begin the discussion at or about the time they made the decision to go to medical school. And in your case, a great deal happened prior to that decision. So I want to take us there. You were actually born in South Lebanon, which has been a turbulent part of the world for a very long time. In fact, I remember 1967 very well. The Arab-Israeli War was underway, and there was great trouble in the Middle East. And that was the situation that you were born into. So if you will, just take us through the circumstances around your birth and those early days.
Absolutely, Randy. And you're right. That region has been unstable since I was born, and it continues to be. What is so interesting is that I've never thought my life was different or my life was interesting or special until the last sort of 4 or 5 years when I did a TED Talk. Then I started to realize, friends asking me questions. Wow, I can't believe that you live this way. And I still actually can't understand why is my life so different. But maybe I can understand it more as we speak about it. So Randy, in 1967, my mom was pregnant, and the story that she told me, and we laugh about it when we talk about it. So at night, there was civil war going on. And as you mentioned, the war between, I think, at the time, multiple countries and I think Syria, Israel. I'm not sure how many of them. The point is that we had to flee our village. And the way we fled our village is in the back of a truck. And in the back of the truck, there was many people in it. According to my mother, there was shoulder to shoulder. And as we, because I was in my mom's womb at the time, apparently an hour away from the village, my mom went into labor. And they have gone to a village called Maraki. And you know that actually the interesting thing, the word Maraki in Arabic means war or fight.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is actually fascinating. So they pulled over to the first house they found at the time on the side of the street. And, in the Middle East, people tend to be open to each other, especially in situations where there's war. And my father went down knocking on the door. An old lady answered, and he told her, my wife is in labor and our village is under siege. And the lady just apparently just took them all in. And there was only one room in her house. That's it, a single room. So,
Jihad, if I may interrupt you just a moment, I just want to underscore that. So you guys are fleeing war. You're in a town where you don't really know anybody. Your mother goes into labor, and rather than try to find a hospital, you just go to a person's house, right?
Yes, correct.
That is remarkable. It really is. So, pardon the interruption, but do go ahead.
No, it's okay. And actually, the hospitals would probably, according to what I was told, I would not take someone giving birth to a child at the time. They would only take, injured people.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So the lady, this elderly lady, probably at the time, maybe in her 50s, because I met her later on in life. So she took us all in, and she kept everybody out. And my mom said that this lady was very confident and she just knew what to do exactly. And she yelled in the middle of the street to the neighbors, come on over, I need help. There are people here fleeing war and they need some assistance. And I got to tell you, Randy, my mom started to cry because she said, within 10 minutes, there were more people from the village that we settled into than the people that came out of the truck. And food, water, etc. took care of everybody. But in the meantime, there's a lady in town she's a lady that gives birth to people.
She's a midwife.
She's a midwife. She is the midwife that everybody uses. And she just arrived, and they took my mom to that room, that famous room. We call it the famous room because this is the room that we end up living in for a while. So they put my mom in the corner, and the midwife came in, and they did their thing, and I was born. So after I was born, there was, despite the war and everything, there was celebration. That's a cultural thing. And the men sat together, and this is how they do things, apparently. They sat together and they thought, we're struggling, we're trying to survive, and we're striving for better things. We think the name Jihad is perfect for him because we're struggling to survive. And Randy, the interesting part, actually struggling to survive, sacrifice for other, or these are the kind of things actually the word Jihad means. And so the name, it really met the situation really well. And not that you fighting against somebody or shooting at somebody. No, it's actually trying, struggling to survive, striving for better, sacrificing for other. So the name came after a group of men met together, ended up being my mom's brother who came up with the name, and my father agreed on it. And I was given my father's first name as my second name. So my name is Jihad Ali, and Mustapha is our last name. So this is how the story went, and I was told it was uneventful. And actually, in fact, the neighbors came over and everybody took a family. And in the morning, all the families that were in the back of the truck, they were in a new home, basically living with another family. And they stayed there for a while until they were able to move on.
That's really fascinating, and I am particularly fascinated with the significance of your name as it would be heard in an Arabic country as opposed to the connotation that it has taken on in the U.S. That's really fascinating.
Randy, I wanted to mention it because I went back when I came to the U.S. and I was second-year medical students, and I've been, harassed a little bit, not that much really. People have been really kind all my life to me, but when it comes to my name, I've had some issues. So I asked my mother one day, I was like, why did you name me Jihad? I mean, that is not a good name for anyone to have. And this is when they actually sat down and told me the story, and they tell me. But of course, I've read the meaning of it and I understand it. But I wanted to get their perspective. So they gave me the perspective, and they were offended that I said that because what it meant to them is they were trying to survive. That's all they were trying to do. So my name reminds them of that night.
Well, it's a great way to remember that night, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And what I'd like to do now is start to advance the story a little bit. Were you ever able to return to the village that your family had left?
Yes. So we returned and
back to their original home.
Back to original home, and so my early years in life memories are never actually without running to the shelter or hiding from bullets or something, or a neighbor got shot. So, really, the interesting part is it's normal. Even when few bombs explode about, let's see, mile away or 2 miles away, you're good. You keep on playing, and even your mother doesn't say anything. So, as a kid, you kind of you become so immune. You just go on until the bombs get closer, then you take action. So this is how the childhood was, and it was a norm. And for me, it was when people hear that, they had a reaction to it, and I'm like, well, this is life. To me, it wasn't abnormal. Now I think about it, and it is abnormal.
I'm sure. And tell me a little bit about your father. What was his occupation?
My father is a self-made man, doesn't read or write, and so is my mother. But he taught himself math and taught himself how to read, actually, in my age, as I was growing up with him. So he learned how to read.
That's interesting.
And and he was somebody that was responsible for his brothers and sisters because his father died when he was 12. So and he never went to school. So he worked initially fixing shoes, and he used to walk in the 1940s, according to my dad, to Palestine, Jerusalem, in the area there to fix shoes, and using leather as the main material. From there, he started to import things, and next thing you know, he has a big business, import-export, and also a huge business for construction. So actually, I didn't get the pleasure of enjoying his success financially, but I got the better pleasure. I got to enjoy his one-on-one discussions, how he made his money and how he lost his money. And the beautiful thing about my father that I will never forget is as we were watching his fleet of ships that he owned, that he used to import and export with, as they're getting bombed and exploded, and there's no insurance in Lebanon. I looked at him and I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "I'm sorry about everything that's happening." And he turned at me and said, Jihad, God gives you and God takes. When he gives you, you thank him, and when he takes, you thank him. And that was it. That was his response to losing, I don't know what was the cost of his fleet at the time, but it was that calm.
There's a lot of wisdom in that. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
And did he ever encourage you to become more of a businessman, or was it a matter of he wanted you to follow whatever dream you had? What was that like?
I was the only one that was sort of not in the business family, or family business, sorry. And I had a brother named Nabil who was 18 months older than me. So we were not as much in the business family. And I have gotten into a school for kids that are interested in math and physics early on. It's a French system school. It's called La Frère du Liban. So we go to school, and then after school, we'll go to my father's store and help him. So we'd help deliver, construction material to different places. So he taught us how to work and the value of working. But my older brothers were more involved with working with my father. But interestingly, all the ones that were working with him had left school at the 5th grade level, except for myself and my brother. We did not. We finished high school.
But he never discouraged you from following your scientific interests then?
He never encouraged me. He always sort of left it to me. I did my homework on my own because no one can help me. And never asked me actually a question about school. It's not until I came to the U.S., and I'll explain to you later, his interest changed. But before, he didn't know what class I was in, what grade, sometimes what school. And he had 12 kids, Randy. So having 12 kids is not easy sometimes.
Remember medical school? You were confident, studious, hardworking, and you learned what to expect in all manner of patient care. Then reality struck. Regulations, expenses, staff management, and administration. Is this what we signed up for? Stress on the verge of burnout, no time for family, or the reason we got into medicine. Helping people. What are the options when you're afraid you're in the wrong career? Transition, teach, quit? What if there was another way? MD Coaches can help. We're a team of medical professionals with a century of experience in the clinical and business sides of medicine. More importantly, MD Coaches has been where you are, stressed and trying to navigate a world school didn't prepare us for. MD Coaches is your mentor, your confidant, to help you make your practice shine, navigate administrations, and successfully lead staff and projects. Or if you're ready to transition, we can help there too. MD Coaches is doctors helping doctors. Visit our website to receive a free, no-obligation consultation. Go to mymdcoaches.com/RX. That's mymdcoaches.com/RX. Isn't it time someone else was on your side? Don't let the business of being a doctor stop you from doing what you love. That site again, mymdcoaches.com/RX. Visit us today.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of your really earliest memories. You were very young when the Lebanese Civil War broke out in 1975. I mean, it's just impossible for me to conceive of what that must have been like for a child of your tender years. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it was like?
Yes. These are my earliest memories that seems to stick with me the most. And I must have been about 8 years old back then. Not really sure. It was a sudden type of war, different than what we're used to, the bombing. And this time there was bombing and bullets and fighting and a lot of scare tactics that were going to be killed. And so in that time, we were all ran into a kind of taken into a shelter. In that shelter was obviously the neighborhood staying in there. And as we were sitting in there, every mother is counting her kids. Are all her kids there? And one mother had a kid missing, a kid I grew up with, next door neighbor. And she went out to look for him. And when she went out to look for him, she didn't find him. So she came back. By the time she came back, he had come back before her. And when she came back, she was lit up a cigarette and she was smoking it. She got a little lightheaded and smoke was coming from her shirt, from her back.
Oh my goodness.
And then the oldest kid there was me. So the adult at the time asked me to come and put my finger on both holes where the shrapnel or bullet has gone through, and then to have her lay on my knee. And I did that because they don't want her son to see this. And you know what? She continued to smoke till she stopped breathing and she died. And
my goodness.
And I didn't know what to do except keep holding it. And even when she stopped breathing or smoking, I kept my fingers where they told me to put them. And they came and asked me what's going on. I said, I don't know. And someone decided she died. So they took me and they took me to other side of the shelter. And there's someone bleeding. And they asked me to put your hand here and push hard until someone comes and take her. It was another lady, another mother. Wow. And this one was not talking either. And the blood was just kind of coming out no matter what I did. And my intuition was to put both hands and push harder and do what I can. And a few older men came in and took her. And when they got outside, heard screaming and yelling. So she died by the time she went upstairs. This is the first day of the war and my memory. And the day continued actually on like this. And I was in charge downstairs of giving the first aid and keeping all the kids away from the door.
So you had your very first experience with tending to the sick long before your entry into medical school, right?
Yes, and actually I never was interested in becoming a doctor at the time in Lebanon. But the circumstances back then pushed me into doing this, and I did it many times, many days. And it's, some people find it hard to talk about. Some people don't. The way I look at it is trying to help somebody, because what I was told to go and help somebody, and you do what it takes to help somebody. And that kind of stuck with me for life. So that's my approach to life right now, is help anyone in need that I can help.
Yeah, and that was clearly the right thing to do at that time, and it clearly has had a profound effect on your life. It's a fascinating story, and thank you for sharing it with us. I want to move forward, fast forward, if you will, and get to the point where you and your brother began to conspire to get the both of you to the U.S. Tell us about that.
So the war continued, and it's. I think at the time, as I mentioned, Randy, our age, we're not really sure exactly. This is the age that we were given and the paperwork that we were given. So we were allowed to go to the embassy and get a visa to come to the U.S. If you're at a certain age, you can do that. So,
and were your parents aware that you all were doing that?
No, we were separated from my parents. So I actually go back and mention that. So the war actually got worse, really bad. And my parents decided to split their kids, in different part of the country and go around and visit them. So, or you stay with an aunt or an uncle or anything. The village that we were in, it was the one on the border with Israel. And at the time, Israel had taken over this village. So you couldn't leave and no one could come in. And basically, there was nothing going on there except, war and fighting back and forth. Actually, told my brother that my father said there's papers for us. Also, the Israeli army mentioned that you can go and apply and you can go to the United States or Canada. So I told my brother, we should go. And, I was more aggressive than my brother was at the time. So we needed $800 to be able to go to Tel Aviv. So we went and got the money, and we needed passports. We had them. Went to the Israeli what do you call it, like a building where they're staying. And we asked them, how can we go to Tel Aviv? We have papers to go to the embassy. And they told us to come back the second day in the morning, 8 o'clock, and then they'll help us. So the second day at 8 o'clock, we arrived. But before I get to that point, the $800, the way we raised it, we went from door to door in the village, saying we're the sons of Haj Ali, which is my father, and we need money to make an attempt to flee and go to the United States. And everybody gave us what they can, $20, $10, $50. Finally, we made the $800.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
You just walked from door to door. Now, were these strangers that you were calling on, or were they people that you knew?
I didn't know all of them, but in our village, everybody knows everybody, like the father level, at the father level.
It's a great example of the mentality that ensues when everybody is under attack. That's amazing. You just help everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what happened. And you watch as you grow, kids, when they come talk to my father, they never say their name. They always say, I'm the son of so-and-so. And my father would just know exactly who they are. And I figured we'll do the same. Now, my brother was not happy about it. So he was always behind me when we did this. And so once we collected the money and we counted it many times, Randy, because we did not want to be short. So we made sure we have $800. So we had exactly $800. So we went to the Israeli post, and then they took us in a car to Cross Point. And when we got to the Cross Point, we needed to get to Tel Aviv. And we didn't want to pay any money to get there because we didn't have enough money. We didn't calculate for taxi.
I understand.
In Lebanon, there was no such thing as taxi. We're not used to that.
A teenager doesn't have that kind of foresight, right?
No, did not have that part. So I went back inside and talked to the soldiers and told them that, this would really hurt us a lot in terms of getting enough money to achieve the goal. And, sometimes when God wants things to work out, they work out. So he was able to put us in the back of a truck that was going to a certain point that is close to Tel Aviv. So we sat in the back of the truck, and at the time I had 2 pants, 2 shirts, and that's it. My brother had the same. And the truck took us, dropped us off, and he told us, if you walk that way, the embassy is right there. So we walked probably for about 15 minutes. We found the embassy, got in, as if everything was waiting for us. Did everything we need to do, including physical exam, got our visas. We went to buy tickets, and we found that we only have enough money for one. So,
oh my goodness.
In our culture, the older sibling always makes the decision. So he said, well, you're going to go first, and I'll go back and save money and raise money, and then I'll follow you in a few months. Of course, we argued back and forth a little bit, but he gets the last say. And he gave me $80, which that's all we have left. He kept 20 with him, and I got the tickets, and I came to the United States, and I arrived in June sometimes at 4 p.m. at JFK.
That's quite a story. And so was there anybody there to greet you? How did it go at that point?
No, there was no one to greet me. But before I came, I collected numbers from different people that have relatives in New York. So when I asked for the money, I also asked for phone numbers. So I'm glad I did, because that helped a lot, and I was able to call and found someone.
So you didn't actually have any official connections at all when you arrived in New York City. You just had phone numbers.
Yeah, and no one knew I was coming either.
That was incredibly brave.
Well, it was that or death, so you gotta choose one. So that was a good one.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So I couldn't make the phone calls. Didn't know how to make it, to put a quarter and dial, because we wouldn't have that back home. And I heard a bunch of kids speaking in French, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." So I went to them and started talking to them in French, and I asked them, if they can help me make a phone call. So they got their leader, elderly gentleman. He was very kind. So he made a phone call for me and found someone to come pick me up. That person said, "Just wait for me." They agreed on a place, and I'll be there. So a few hours later, he arrived and picked me up and took me. And the discussion was as follows. "Hi, hello, I am the son of so-and-so. I am here and I would like to start working tomorrow." He said, "No problem. What time?" "Well, what time do you work?" He said, "I go to work at 6. I said, "Well, I'll start working at 6. I asked him.
The day after you arrived?
The second day. Yep.
Wow.
And so he sells umbrellas and the other things. He's got more stuff to sell. He's got a little shop on the side of the street. He said that he'll give me a box of umbrellas to sell, and we'll start the second day. So 6 a.m. I was already standing on Broadway and 20th Street. And
all right, now, Jihad, if you hold on just a minute, and I really apologize for all the interruptions, but there are so many things here that fascinate me. But there's one thing that I'd like to ask you about, because this seems like an incredible stroke of fate. I presume that you were fluent in French because, as I understand it, the state of Lebanon was under French supervision following the end of World War I. And does that mean that it was common in Lebanon at the time that you were there for children to learn French in school, or was that something that you pursued on your own? How did that come about?
No, it was mandatory to be bilingual.
I see.
So up to the 5th grade, you learn in Arabic and some French. And after the 5th grade, it's all in French. And
I see.
The school I went to, La Frère du Liban, it's a French-speaking school. So you can only speak in French in the school. I got to excel in math and physics, and so I was able to finish my high school earlier.
So it was just kind of serendipitous that you happened to be speaking, that you had the ability to speak a language that you heard when you dropped down into a city that is, at least in this country, has more nationalities and more ethnic groups available to you than any other city in America. And it was just by that stroke of luck that you were able to find somebody to help you connect with somebody that could help you. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, I got to tell you, Randy, I mean, I didn't elaborate on it too much, but coming out of the plane and looking at everything around, I mean, you might got to remember, I came from dirt and bombs and nothing, everything is dead around you. And you get out of a plane and this beautiful building, everything is alive. Everyone's walking, laughing, happiness. I mean, I got to tell you, I was so mesmerized. And not for a second did I stop and think, it's like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Actually, that didn't cross my mind. And I was kind of worrisome until I got through the immigration point.
Right.
And then I realized, like, well, I got to go somewhere now. So, so initially I was just, taking it all in, how wonderful everything was and how people dressed and men wore suits and everything was really phenomenal. It's almost like I just want to be part of that right away.
I apologize for the diversion, but let's go back to umbrellas on the street now, if that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So second day, we got up and he dropped me off at the corner of Broadway and 20th, and he gave me a box of umbrellas. And he said,
way downtown in the financial area, right?
Yep. At the time, I just kept looking at the buildings, how tall they are. And it wasn't raining, which is not a good thing for me. And so he said, you have all day to sell this, and you say $2. And he was speaking to me in Arabic, and he said $2, and he showed me the sign how to make two with my fingers, which I knew that. But I had $80 with me. That's the only money I brought with me from Lebanon. And he left. And guess what, Randy? It did not rain that morning. And I sold the box of umbrella by 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, my.
Yes. Problem is...
And didn't speak a word of English.
Nope. Just $2 and $1. That's it. And
wow.
Didn't say dollars, $2. That's
incredible. Incredible.
So, that was fun. Sat in the first box and just kind of sat there, waited for him to come by.
Well, and from that point, how long did you actually stay in New York before you found your way to Michigan and Wayne State?
So I stayed in New York for the time waiting for my brother to make his way to the United States. So about 3 months later, he arrived to Detroit, and then I left New York. And when I met my brother in Detroit, and we started our life together. So we both were working. I worked at Big Boy to kind of clean the bathrooms and mop the floors and etc. And he didn't work at the time, but then he was trying to figure out schooling, etc. So we went to register.
So you were fluent in English at this point, or not?
Actually, I was really good at the time. I mean, really good. I can get myself out of any conversation, no problem.
Yeah.
With some difficulty, and I was translating for him. Then we got a job for him to work in a gas station, for a gas station that is owned by an Arabic person in an area where you didn't really need to speak that much English. So
I see.
So he started to work in the gas station, and I worked at the restaurant. And then in the restaurant, I started to do the homework for the ladies that work there, their physics homework or math homework. So they give me $7 per homework. So I do both.
So you were tutoring?
Yes. Not long after that, as my brother been there probably a couple of months in America, I got out of work, and it was about maybe 2 a.m. or 3 a.m, and I get a call that your brother is dead. He was killed.
Oh my goodness!
And I just kind of, everything just kind of went dark, and this sort of wasn't sound in my ears. Didn't sort of like I don't think I comprehended it, really. To be honest with you, I didn't know if I understood.
Was this some kind of accident or what? If you don't mind me asking.
No, his gas station was robbed, and he was shot and killed.
Oh my goodness!
And he was taken to a hospital, and they tried to save his life, but they couldn't. And so stopped everything and made the arrangements to send him back to Lebanon. And we did, at the time in Dearborn, Michigan, there's cousins, family, everybody came together and helped us send him back to Lebanon. The hardest thing about this, Randy, is the mother. My mother was beyond heartbroken. I mean, I could not console her on the phone, and no mother or father should ever bury a kid. That is the hardest thing. And I try to be a man about it. And when your father is crying on the phone and your mother is crying on the phone, you try to be the parent.
Of course.
And that's what I did.
And of the dozen or so of your siblings, if I'm counting correctly, was Nabil the first to be lost?
He'll be the fourth. So my mom had 15 kids total. 12 lived. The other ones died early on, like 1 year, 2 year. Yeah. But in terms of being shot,
but he was the first
killed,
of the adult children.
He's the first. Yeah. No one else.
And what a horrible thing.
Away. Yeah, he was the favorite. He was full of life. He's I think 19 at the time. He was amazing, wonderful person, very intelligent. He was going to be engaged soon. We had arranged marriage for both of us. I didn't like mine, and he said, "You got to marry her anyway." So we were getting ready to get engaged and do what we're told.
Right.
But, sometimes you just got to accept what's written for you and you move on. And his death was devastating back then, continues to be. It will always be. And you know how it is when you lose somebody. And he was my best friend. So it breaks my heart for my mom and dad. They never, until they died, both of them, they never got over it.
I'm sure.
And I think I've never been sad in my life, despite everything I went through, until he died. And then I learned what sadness is. And and I learned something called compartmentalization. Like it's sort of, because, Randy, I didn't feel like people want to talk about your loss that much, That's, I'm not sure how to explain this to you.
Well, that's kind of leading into my next question, and that is, what kind of effect did that terrible event have on the plans that you had for the future?
With that event, losing my brother changed my entire life, all the plans that I had put for myself. And that definitely introduced me into a world that wasn't prepared to be part of. So the difficulties in dealing with losing your best friend and your brother doesn't leave your sight, and you're forced by nature to be on your feet right away and get back on basically the path to achieve what you came to achieve. Because you see, Randy, I can't go back to Lebanon, and I don't have much here, so kind of like learn to live with the circumstances. So I got the famous call from my father, which was really heart-wrenching, because my entire life is gone now. I can't be what I want. And then he confirmed it more. So in our culture, my father called with my mother, and they asked me to fulfill my brother's dream, and that is to become a doctor. He was going to be a doctor. I wanted to be a physicist. That was my dream, is to become a nuclear physicist or mathematician, one of the two. So that was my passion. That was really sad phone call for me, because I did not like the subjects and being a doctor. Maybe because of what I saw back home, Randy. I was more, I kind of want to take a different direction in life. Then I changed careers. And
so out of respect for your parents and your brother,
yes,
you made a huge change. So tell us about that. Because
of that, I had to change schools, locations, everything. And the reason I had to make the changes, Randy, because I had to think about how can I do this by working and going to school and achieving it. So basically, when you're talking about success and survival, it's, you have to survive first and you have to achieve second. So I looked at the cheapest school you can find in Michigan. So I found that school, the cheapest one, and I registered in it. And I started taking classes like English, biology, and they were so difficult, I got to tell you.
Was this Wayne State?
No, Wayne County Community College, and I am so grateful to that school.
Okay, yeah.
It was only $20 per credit, so there was nothing cheaper than that. And I did 2 years there, and then I went to Wayne State. After that, I started to tutor physics and math instead of working in a big boy, and I was able to actually.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good, reasonable way of making money. And I learned about roommates and living with somebody else. And so things started to get better. And then things will get bad, and they will get better and bad. It's just, it was never a stream of steadiness that you can predict what tomorrow is going to be like. And then my father lost everything in Lebanon due to the war, and they started to need money from me. So now I'm just finished my second year in college, going third year, going away in state. So I started to work more, double shifts in gas stations, and then just take less classes to send them money. And I did it. It was done. It was not easy, but you know what, Randy, you don't say no to your father. And if they need the money, they need the money to survive. So I started to work, and I sold my car and lost the apartment. So you start to actually shave off everything that you think is not essential for you to survive, so you can send money to your parents. And I lived in a park called Hemlock Park. So I just work and go and sleep in a sort of a corner in the area. And then I go to school, take a bus, come back, work. And never thought of it as being a bad thing. It's life,
I'm sure you must have realized at that point that your approach to your circumstances was dramatically different from most Americans.
I have not actually stopped to think that. The first time I realized mine was different than Americans is when I started to sleep in the park. That is when I realized, my goodness, look how easy everybody else got it. And yet they're not interested in that school, and they take it for granted. And they're joking around in the class that I paid so much money for to be in it. And they're laughing and joking. And then, the grade wasn't important. And start to realize, not everyone in that classroom is as aware and appreciative of the opportunity that this country can offer. No other country in the world can offer someone the opportunity that I received. I mean, you talk about an American dream. This is the American dream. I mean, nowhere else in the world I could have achieved this. From that point on, I started to realize I wish everyone knows how fortunate they are, and if they take an advantage of this opportunity they have, how successful they can be. But I could not really say anything to them because,
of course,
I figured that was a bad thing to say, so I didn't say it.
Well, of course, it's very difficult for people to understand what you understand unless they have seen what you have seen. And fortunately or unfortunately, very few Americans have ever been in that position, but clearly you have made the best of it. It's just an incredible story. But let's go ahead and see if we can get you in medical school and a little farther along.
Things, with time, just things get better. So working on getting the green card and etc. and trying to pass an exam called English Proficiency Exam. So I can write a calculus book, but I can't pass an English Proficiency Exam. So it's really frustrating, Randy, I gotta tell you. So anyway, I ended up having...
that's a lot like your dad, now that you think about it. It sounds like he was a pretty good mathematician, but was not so good with the written language. That's very interesting.
It's the argument used to be always, who do I take after? But you always say your mother. If you're smart, you just say your mother. So I did that. So anyway, I decided, if I can't pass that exam, what's the alternative? And I found different schools, like in the Koreans in St. George, does not require. So I just went there. You see, Randy, I was like a bulldozer. I wasn't going to let anything stop in my way. So every obstacle I got, I used it as an opportunity to learn how can I get around it. Because time is of an essence for me. I needed to get to that goal. That's it. No matter what I have to do, I got to get there. So losing another year to pass that exam was not an option for me. So I went to St. George, finished quick, got back to the States, So it's almost like Randy, like an army. You just you learn to walk straight line and just do the proper things to stay alive. And I did, and finished schooling.
Tell me a little bit about medical school. Did you find it? And you'd already talked about the difficulties that you had with the non-scientific disciplines. Did you find medical school easier, more difficult, about the same? What was your experience there?
I found it more difficult because I found that I had to read a lot more and spend more time doing my, reading things than I did in the math and physics world.
So it was more the volume of things, the quantity of things, as opposed to just not being able to comprehend it. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, and also I ended up finding out that I have severe dyslexia, which is really
my
nice.
Goodness.
Yeah,
that'll change things.
That I didn't. Well, that was so depressing, quite frankly. Because I didn't know what that is. What is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I was trying to understand it. And gosh, I mean, talk about getting hit left and right. I learned about the curveball at the same time. And that dyslexia really was something that I wasn't prepared for. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let this come in the way. So what can I do? So I figured out methods to learn, and I learned. And so, somebody's reading, I just listened to them. I found it easier that way. Mm-hmm. And I started to memorize things when the teacher is speaking. I found an alternative way. Again, another obstacle in the way. I found an alternative way until I finished schooling. But things got much, much better when I got into the hospital, because then it wasn't about reading. It was more about interaction, discussion, and I was good at mixing, medicine with physiology and etc. So really, it became so enjoyable then, and I never thought it would become my passion until third and fourth year in med school, and that kind of changed my approach. It went from I can't wait till I finish this so I can please my mother and my father, because I wasn't planning on practicing medicine, into, wow, this is really great. I can do a lot of good things with it. And this is kind of the light went on, and decided, well, what is the closest thing to math and physics? And cardiology was the one that is closest to it. So I went into that.
Yeah, good point. The Starling curve, right?
Yeah, exactly. So from there, finished medical school, and about student loans, right, in the United States, and thank goodness for that. So I used the student loans to support my parents while I'm going to school, and that was again, you have to find a way to continue to persevere and not stop. And the idea here is to always find some avenue to allow you to continue to press forward, but at the same time support your needs and your family's needs. Mm-hmm. And only in this country you can do this.
Good point. So you went to LSU for your cardiology fellowship, and I'm gathering from what you have said before that things really began to fall into place for you at that point. You really kind of felt at home, at least with that particular discipline. Is that correct?
Yes. At Wayne State, toward the end of my training there, I met my current wife, and so she's a wonderful lady, very supportive. And I met my wife. Her name is Lori, and got married, and then explained to her that I have to go to this country because I can't be here. And she's like, what? Just because of the English proficiency exam? So, and that was another kind of interesting things for me, Randy. It's it was so interesting how for her, that is the simplest thing for someone to move on and graduate. And to me, that was the biggest hurdle in life. And I knew when I left my country that I wasn't going to marry someone from my race or my country for many reasons. I wanted to marry someone different. And she's American, and my parents did not approve initially, and kind of got to disowning your something, and lived with that for a little bit, but still send them money though. And so she played a major part in helping me understand this dyslexia thing, because if it wasn't for her, I probably would never learn about it. So I need to give her some credit for it. So she also helped me to learn about my student loans and, other things like that. I did my residency in a place called Grand Rapids, Michigan. And this is where started to flourish and learn about the American culture, the suburb. And imagine, Renee, for all these years that I've been here, I've not actually stopped working since 6 a.m. after I came
I've noticed
to
that.
the United States. Yeah, and so I did my residency in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we made a deal, my wife and I, that if she would let me do my fellowship in a place that is sunny and close to the ocean, I would come back and live here in Grand Rapids, because I did not like the cold or the snow.
That's a pretty good bargain.
She won. Actually, she got a better deal, because we have to live here forever now versus could have done my fellowship somewhere else.
And it gets cold every year, doesn't it?
Yep. So we made that deal. I went down, did my fellowship in Louisiana State University, and it was really great. I really loved it and enjoyed it so much. And as I was doing it, I started to see things differently than everyone else. I started to see the need for peripheral vessels, smaller vessels in the legs that are not getting treated, and started to see looking at cardiovascular instead of cardiology, and got in trouble a few times. Not a bad trouble, but just curiosity kind of trouble. And
just bring me up to about what time period that was, Jihad. Was that like?
It's around 2000 now, and
right.
Yeah, and started my. Luckily, Randy, I applied like every person would, right? To every cardiology fellowship program in the country, because you want to make it to one. My first interview was at Louisiana State University, and the money's tight and time is tight, and at the time, this fellowship is not matching, so you don't match. You can, if they offer you the position, you take it. Within an hour of the interview, the program director, Dr. Glancy, offered me the position, and I said yes. I didn't even ask any question. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what went through my mind is a lot of things different than what Dr. Glancy was thinking. I was thinking about all the money I'm going to save for, canceling all the other interviews that I had. Because I was moonlighting in 4 hospitals back in Michigan to support my parents. Now I'm married. So saying yes was the wisest thing. And now that I secured a position in cardiology, I went back feeling for the first time something is achieved and something is worth celebrating. Everything else I've done to this point, Randy, didn't mean much to me, actually, except when I got the fellowship.
I gather that early on in your cardiology training, you probably knew that you were headed for an interventional fellowship as well. Am I correct about that?
Within the first month, yes. As you know, throughout your career, right, you get attracted to something, and when you do, goodness sake, I mean, you just cannot stay away from it. And by the second year, I was doing things on my own, supervised, of course.
Sure. And
this is when I started to venture into doing other things like fixing, vessels and major vessels in the legs or the aorta with stenting, and it was
that was at a time when they were just beginning to talk about interventional cardiology. Up until that time, it was pretty much diagnostic.
Yes,
and that was in the very beginnings, the birth of cardiac intervention and peripheral vascular intervention. What an exciting time for you, and what a great time to be there, huh?
Randy, that was actually a very exciting and challenging time, because as you said, at the time, only vascular surgery dealt with peripheral vascular disease.
That's right.
And
that was my territory.
Yeah, absolutely, and rightfully so. But imagine how lucky I was. The vascular surgery rooms, they were right next to the cath lab rooms, and the CT surgery operating room were around the corner. I mean, where in the world would someone find such opportunity except me? So, things just fell into place for some reason. And every time the vascular surgeon needed something, like a quick angiogram or something like that, I was the first to run and do it. And I would talk the vascular surgeon into, why don't you just balloon this one? And it's a short one. And it's like, what would you do here? I'd run and get the balloons and come back and do it with the vascular surgeon. And, we build a great relationship. And before I know it, they let me work with them on my time off from my interventional cardiology fellowship.
Relationships are everything, aren't they?
They really are. And, today I started a movement called multidisciplinary approach to peripheral vascular disease, which we named it Leave Your Specialty Behind. It's we'll talk about a meeting that I started in Chicago later. But this thing actually is not just now. I mean, it's been sort of boiling inside of me for years. Back to the days when vascular surgery and cardiology and CT surgery, everybody worked in the same place, and everyone learned from everyone. Great days, Randy, and hopefully we'll see more of that in the future.
That's a brilliant idea. It's and how fortunate for you to kind of be the guy, the right place and the right time, right?
Absolutely, and willing to work hard. Right? You could be in the right place in the right time. If you're not working hard and you're not prepared, you might miss that opportunity. So I was there before everyone else, and I was the last one to leave. So as I got into my fellowship, I saw the unmet need in many different things in the peripheral vascular disease world. So I learned something about patent and invention. So I had a patent and I sold it early on, and I learned, well, there's other means of making financial support besides medicine. So I started working with inventions and companies and innovations. And so when I finished my fellowship, I was already done with, selling one patent and have two kids, twins at the time, a boy and a girl. And my
that was
youngest boy,
a
Nabil. Yes, it was a great surprise. I was moonlighting in the same hospital when my twins were born. Talk about, using your time wisely. I don't think my wife likes
yeah,
that.
Really.
But, it just happened to be that way. So we had our family down in New Orleans, and then we moved back to Grand Rapids, Michigan.
So you remained true to your promise. You got your wife back to the frozen north, and immediately got into private practice. What was that like?
It was different. Private practice is not academia, and I wanted to stay in academia for a reason. I was very curious when I do research, and there was so much to do back then in academia. Private practice was different when it was just about, just do what you have scheduled for you that day.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't the most exciting things for me. So I started to migrate from doing interventional cardiology to doing peripheral vascular intervention. And that was very exciting, but also I got into a lot of trouble again, having to answer questions. Yeah. But then we worked it out, and the hospital that I was at agreed that I work with vascular surgery together, and I can do stenting and other things. But the nice thing, Randy, we got a chance to talk about procedures and patients together, and the patients got the best end of the deal.
Well, it's a great credit to you that you were able to pull that off. It says a lot about your ability to communicate. It says a lot about your patients. And again, it just kind of falls in line with everything else that you've told us about your remarkable life. You knew where you wanted it to go, and you made sure it got there, sounds like.
I did. And so I just want to give you another part of life then that I didn't want to skip, but I wanted to summarize it. Because in parallel to all of this, in my last year of training, we had a son named Nabil that was born, and he had a rare syndrome that no one knew what it was. So he was born and he almost died as, was probably 8 minutes old or 9. And I saw him struggling, and I actually ran a code on my own son. And wow. I knew right away from his color and his neck that he's got something going on with the pulmonary artery. So I called, the pediatric cardiologist, and I said, my son probably needs balloonoplasty of his pulmonary artery. And she came right away. We took him down, and he needed it. And so she saved his life. I'm grateful to her. And he was in intensive care units for 30 days. And I was thinking, maybe I should not have named Nabil, Start to think, I don't believe in that things, but if you start to believe in it at the time, because my brother Nabil died, and then I named my son after my brother. So it was in ICU for a whole month, and then we had to have open heart surgery. So when we moved up to Michigan, Grand Rapids, we took him to University of Michigan, had our open heart surgery, and corrected the problem that he had. And we were told that he'll need another surgery in a few years. So he was sick a lot, actually. And that was part of the struggle to continue to work and deal with his issue. And still, he doesn't have a diagnosis. And this is where kind of read every genetic disorder there is until I found one. And it's called BRAF mutation. It's a spontaneous mutation. There's only about 100 kids like him right now. So when life is chooses to challenge you sometimes, which it keeps on giving, and I just keep on taking and figuring out and dealing with it. So he's now, if you ask me what is the best thing that ever happened to me, I would tell you that having my son Nabil. Because he really taught me what is perseverance is, and to really persevere through the hard times, and to keep him alive right now. I mean, I have to be on my toes the entire time. So that's another, but that's part of life. You see, people sometimes feel sorry for me, and I say, don't feel sorry for me. That's an awful thing to say, because having a son like this is a special gift that makes you a lot stronger, and probably I am much more able to do things that are difficult and face difficult situations, because having to deal with a very complex special need son with severe disease, heart disease, and other issues makes you really prepared for any situations anytime.
Well, I'm not surprised that you can take a situation like that and see it as a gift. It certainly reflects all the other very interesting things that we've talked about up to now. Jihad, what I would like to do at this point, we could certainly go on for hours and learn more about what you've done in the field of interventional cardiology, and perhaps we might have you back and talk about that at another time. But what I would like to do at this point is segue us into what is actually my favorite part of the show, and that's where we get some advice from you. So I'm going to sit quietly, and if you will, go ahead and give us your prescription for success.
Absolutely. So, Randy, to sum my journey in the United States, I would say this is the country of opportunity for sure. And the things that got me through and continue to keep me going into my career, other success that I've had. First of all, my 3 prescriptions that I would say, number 1, 2, and 3. First prescription is ambition. The ambition is the key for any type of success. After ambition, perseverance is something that you must have. You must always not take anything for granted. And this is what perseverance is. And I never thought I would give up on anything. Actually, the idea of giving up on something never crossed my mind. And then actually complacency. People always forget about that part of life, to get complacent. And the reason actually I say that, because I go back on the days when I was going to college and university and worked so hard to pay for my tuition, and I'm trying to understand everything that is going on. But others who had the means, they can be complacent, and they take things for granted because they don't work hard for it. So to be successful, ambition, persevere, and don't ever become complacent. Because even if you become successful and you become complacent after that, you can be unsuccessful very easy. And most importantly, I would like to say, humbly, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And that is something I did for many reasons. Primarily, I got dyslexia, but I can read and deal with things. But surround yourself with people that are smarter than you later on in your life as you achieve a career. And that's my 3 prescriptions, really.
Well, Dr. Jihad Mustapha, thank you very much for sharing that wisdom with us. And I have to say, you are someone who truly lives by the wisdom that you speak. You are quite an example for anyone who wants to pay attention to how you've spent your life. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to spend some time with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak. And I wish everyone the best of luck, and take advantage of what you're given. You're given a great opportunity in this country. Take advantage of it.
Well, thank you for that. And before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners how they can follow you. If you want to share email addresses or websites or upcoming events where you'll be speaking, or anything that you have on your list that you'd like to share, go ahead and give it to us right now.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate that. So I started a foundation called, it's a nonprofit foundation. It's called Nabil Foundation. It's my son, for the BRAF syndrome, which is a syndrome that is not understood, not at all. And a lot of kids are born and they die within an hour for it. If you look it up, and you can find what you need to read about those kids on there and just learn about it. My email, I like to give it to people just to hear. And I actually kept my name, Jihad, Jihad, Mustapha, Mustapha @AOL.com. Email me your thoughts on what you're going through. I love to talk to people. That's one great passion I have. And my Twitter account @JMustapha, Twitter. Again, I'm on Twitter a lot as well. And these are the things that I like to promote, Randy. And again, thank you for this great opportunity.
And again, thank you as well, Jihad. It's been a real pleasure, and we're grateful for you being with us.
Thank you, Randy.
And that's all we have for today. So thank you very much for joining us as we celebrate our 2nd anniversary. Special thanks also to Ryan Jones, who composed and performs our music for us. We hope you'll remember to follow us on your favorite podcast download platform, or just visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com. Reviews and 5-star ratings are very helpful to us, so please add your voice. And speaking of your voice, when you visit rxforsuccesspodcast.com, we hope you'll offer your own personal prescription for success on SpeakPipe. If you do, you just might hear it played back on an upcoming show. That's all for now, so be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.